Nettles in Nettleden. I'm in the village of Nettleden today, and I'm going to take an interesting little walk through an ancient track to the neighbouring village of Frithsden. Now, the church here at Nettleden isn't actually all that old. I think what we're looking at here was built in 1811, but it is an ancient site. Some of the gravestones, such as this one here, do go back beyond this particular incarnation of the Christian church. This one seems to be dated 1768. Now, I think the earliest records of a church on this site were 14th century. But there are yew trees here, and one of them is the biggest, I think, probably the biggest I've ever seen in a local churchyard. You've got these ones here, look, fairly standard fare for a Bedfordshire, Buckinghamshire, Hertfordshire churchyard in a nice little village. But look at this bad boy, look. They've even fenced it off to stop people climbing it and damaging it. Look at the trunk on that. That is one hell of a yew tree. I dread to think how old that is. And it's one of the things that signify just how old this site is, and that it clearly dates back to pre-Christian times. There's more to show you around the front of the church. Not more yew trees, but more evidence as to its age and its previous significance. Now, this particular tree is actually dripping in berries at the moment, and I'm very tempted to try one. I'm not going to, and please don't. Yew berries are deadly poisonous. I've got a feeling just one can be fatal. But the interesting thing is, the poison is all in the pit, in the stone in the middle. There's a good example. Oh, I've just squished it. There's a good example. Can you see the stone in the middle? That's where the poison is. And as long as you're very careful, and you spit that stone out, the flesh is actually supposed to be, there's the stone, look. The flesh is supposed to be very beneficial. It's meant to be really good at stopping you getting cancer and fighting heart disease and all sorts of other things. But fact remains, if you swallow that pip, you're dead. So I'm not going to try one, as much as I'd like to. I really would like to, but I'm not going to risk it, because I've got so many gaps in my teeth. You can probably tell by the way I talk. I can't guarantee that that pip isn't going to get stuck and lost and later swallowed. But how is that for a yew tree? Just look at it. It's a beast. Now, that pathway I'm about to go down when I leave the church, I've got my suspicions that it's a very ancient one. I'll explain more about it as we go. But just quickly come and have a look around the front of the church here, because I wasn't expecting this. I had to look around and I found some pudding stones. Another signifier as to its pre-Christian uses. Look. We've got a couple of nice big ones laid out the front here. I can't see any, there they are, I can't see any built into the church itself. It's all brick, it's not even flint. The old churches are all flint, this one's all brick. Like I said, 1811, I think. Look at these pudding stones, what are they doing here? They've been here a lot longer than this church has. Nice examples there. I half suspected that I might find some, and I did. And look at that. I don't know anything about how old this is or where it came from. An old carved stone sarcophagus, which isn't pudding stone. No, it's not. No, that appears to be some sort of sandstone, I'd say. But that's pretty damn old. Again, a lot older than the church whose yard within it sits. Right, there's not much to say about this church really, other than its obvious ancient ancestry. You won't find anything on the website if you have a look. It doesn't tell you anything, you just need to come and find out for yourself. These yew trees here, obviously very recent planting, put in as a nice little avenue. Now, if we leave the churchyard, I'm going to make my way around to the lane that I want to walk down, and hopefully we're going to get acquainted with a couple of local ghosts and a weird old bridge. We'll stop at Big Sue's. I've just parked Big Sue's just at the entrance to the lane, which you can drive up. It says it's unsuitable for motor vehicles, but that's exactly the sort of thing that Big Sue's likes. I'm not going to drive it, I'm going to walk it, because I want to walk. I'm going to show you on the map where we're going to go, and then we shall partake of a wander. That's where we're headed to. It's called Roman Road, and it supposedly is a Roman road, although to me it seems a bit odd for a Roman road. It doesn't seem quite right. We'll discuss that later. First of all, before we head off, let me just show you. Sorry about the mess. It's a practical vehicle. We're just here, look. If I zoom out, you've got Hemel Hempstead, Kensworth, Dunstable. And here is our little track that we're going to walk along. Starting at the church here, where you've just seen, finishing up at the Alford Arms in Frithsden. You can see it's spelt Frithsden, but it's pronounced Frithsden, as though it had a Z. Whether or not we actually stop in that pub, I don't know. There's usually about £500,000 worth of rich people's cars in the car park, and there's only about 10 spaces, so that says a lot about this area. But halfway along this track there's a very strange old bridge where two ghosts have been seen. A monk from the abbey just off the map over here at not Woburn, what am I talking about, just over here at Ashridge House, and also a Roman legionnaire is said to guard the track. We're going to expand on this map later on because I want to show you it in its wider context, and I can't quite figure it out. It's something about it doesn't quite make sense, but I'll give you the story as we go, and then we'll finish off by looking again at the map and see how it fits in with the wider landscape. Now then, let's get off up there. I'll drive it one day, but today I just fancy the walk. Now as we head off, the first thing I'd like to point out, for the benefit of Annie, my niece Annie, she's only 10 and she gets a bit scared about ghosts. So first thing I'd like to say is, of course there's no such thing as ghosts, we all know that. They're just stories made to scare people. They seem to do their job with her, they do scare her. She found out about the ghosts of the cricket team who haunt the old A5, now the A5 183, outside the Packhorse pub, just next to Kensworth. And apparently, according to her dad, she refuses to get in the car if they're going to be driving past there. So, we're talking about ghosts, but just bear in mind they're not real. Okay, I can already, it's sooner than I thought. Right, let me show you. This is called Roman Road, and they say it's a Roman road. Only a short section of it remains, but looking on the map, it looks as though, I suspect originally it came from somewhere in the region of Berkhamsted Castle, where we've already been, and there's a video for that. And it finishes up here at Nettleden. What remains goes between Frithsden and Nettleden. Sorry, Frithsden and Nettleden. Now this bridge that you can see up ahead, that was built in the 1800s by either the Earl of Bridgewater or the Brownlow, the Earl of Brownlow, the Brownlow family. They're basically, as far as I can tell, both the same family, but due to marriage the name changed at some point. Now they're the posh knobs who own the whole Ashridge estate, even to this day I think. And the idea was that this, passing across the top of the bridge, was an old track that went from the River Gade, across the fields, over the farmland, and to Ashridge House and the monastery at the Ashridge estate. Now, the Earl, being an Earl, didn't want his wife to have to look at the peasants as she was coming to and from the house. So what they did, they dug this all out. Originally this wasn't what looks a bit like a hollow way. Apparently it's not an ancient hollow way. It did follow the contour of the land originally, but because that Earl, Bridgewater or Brownlow or whoever he was, didn't want his wife to have to see or smell the peasants, he actually built this bridge across the top and dug the track out so that the peasants can stay down here in all the mud where they belong, and his beautiful wife could pass by in absolute luxury without having to see any of the people who keep her in food. Let's have a look. I could bring the car up here easily, actually. Big Suze would have no problem doing this. I will do sooner or later. It's deep, isn't it? Look. Look at the cutting. A lot of work went into that. Those peasants, those poor little people who lived in the village, this would have kept them employed for quite a long time, making sure that the posh knobs didn't have to look at them. I like this already. Now I've had a look on the map, and this this trackway that goes across the top of the bridge goes along through past Little Gadsden, not Great Gadsden, not Gadsden Row, Little Gadsden. It goes past Little Gadsden and does actually head off in the direction of Ashridge House. So I think that story about this being built by the Earl for privacy is probably accurate. But look at the work that's gone on here though. That's a lot of building. Now originally this wasn't the video that I was going to make. For about the last 3 weeks I've been wanting to make a video covering the old tales of witchcraft and burnings and hangings and duckings that went on in these little villages. There are so many references to it in the road names, in the buildings, in the names of the woods, and there are very brief mentions of people who were dispatched because of alleged witchcraft in this area. It seems to all be centred on this little patch, but I just haven't been able to find enough worthwhile information to include in a video. So I think what I'm going to do, between now and Halloween, it'll make a good Halloween video. Between now and Halloween, I'm going to see what I can find in the way of books where I might find a bit more information. Online it's just fleeting references. Like I said, there is evidence in the maps and the house names and the road names, but I need more than that. So between now and Halloween I'm going to see what I can get to entertain you with. For now we're just going to have a look at this little bit. It cropped up in my research. My job brings me to stables at that end of the lane and also to stables at that end of the lane. So I had noticed this place and it got my curiosity up. When I found out about the bridge, I thought let's have a look, especially as there's ghosts. Now what they say is that this track between Nettleton and Frithsden is haunted by a monk or an abbot from the monastery over at Ashridge, and also a Roman legionary. They say that this is a Roman road, but I'm not sure. It doesn't seem to go anywhere. It seems to, well, if you follow the line that this path takes and take it through the golf course at the end, which has obviously obliterated any remainder of it at that side of it, if you follow the path, if you follow the line where the path would have been, it does seem to go down to Berkhamsted Castle. That's in that direction. However, in that direction, it doesn't really seem to go anywhere. There is a public footpath once you get to the end of this track and cross the main road. Well, the main road, the single track lane that goes through Nettleden. There is a public footpath that continues on the other side, and that goes up to an old burial mound in a hamlet called St Margaret's, where I also go for work. It's another place that I'm quite familiar with. But that burial mound is in a little copse, or well, coppice as it used to be pronounced. Little burial mound there, which must be prehistoric. I'd say probably Bronze Age at the latest, from what I've seen of burial mounds around here. And this end, interestingly, it passes right through that big section of Grimm's Ditch. I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago, my first Grimm's Ditch video that I did. We went and visited quite a very big, obvious section of it next to the golf course. And this passes right through that 90-degree corner of Grimm's Ditch, which piqued my interest. And again, I'm not surprised that I found those pudding stones in the graveyard. It's tying a lot of little things together, this walk. Pudding stones, Grimm's Ditch, local stories of witches and ghosts. But I'm not entirely convinced this was a Roman road. Although everybody says it is, it's what it's referred to and it's what it's called. It doesn't quite seem to be anything like your usual Roman road. I'll tell you what, we passed that bridge way earlier than I expected. I thought it was going to be, I mean actually on Google Maps, on the satellite image, it did actually mark the bridge as being about halfway along the track. Well, actually in fact, it was right at the beginning of the track. Now, there's not much to look at as we continue. It's all hedges and trees, and either side is just farmland. So, I think what we'll do, I will go back, we'll get Big Sue's, and we'll drive along the track down to the other end, down to the pub. We'll see if it looks like it's actually worth stopping at. Because that attitude that the Earl had when he built the bridge so that his dainty wife didn't have to smell the peasants as she passed through the village, that attitude kind of prevails here. There's a lot of it around here. You don't feel very welcome on the public footpaths. Every single private residence has got keep out signs all around it. See, when I stumbled across this bridge, when I was looking into the witchcraft stories, I was actually focusing on a place called Little Gadsden. It's another place that I work quite a lot. In Little Gadsden, there's a place called Witch's Bottom, and there's a big manor house at the bottom called Witch's Hill, and all of the properties leading down to that building, they're called things like Witch's Copse, Witchcraft, the Coven or the Coven. It's just so much of it going on. And there's a lady I know who was telling me about a servant girl who was hung off of one of the big trees down at that big manor house at the bottom of the lane. We won't go there today. I want to find out much more before we go filming there. But there is a place she mentioned just down next to the pub that we're about to go to, and she calls it the Mural House. It's a beautiful old building, flint construction, if I remember rightly. I pass it a lot. I'm pretty sure it's made of flint, but parts of it have got really old-fashioned render over the flint, and it's got all sorts of patterns and symbols and things carved or, you know, sort of printed into the render. We'll have a quick look at that, and I'll tell you why she thinks it's of importance. Oh, incidentally, the lady who told me this, she runs a local donkey sanctuary. It's only a 10-minute walk or 2-minute drive from here. If anybody wants to go there and have a look, I thoroughly recommend it. I took my 2 youngest nieces, well, my brother's 2 youngest, I took them there to meet the donkeys and they loved it. It's either Folly Farm or Folly's Farm. I think it's Folly's Farm. But it's in Nettleden. If you just Google, if you're local and you fancy an afternoon out, she's open on Sunday afternoons. Take a bit of money, give her a donation, because she doesn't receive any official funding to save all these donkeys from, well, you can guess who. I won't mention who they generally come from. But she saves these donkeys who are horribly mistreated and gives them a lovely retirement. She's got a big bit of land, lots of stables. She's not young. She is not a young lady by any means, and she does it all single-handedly. So, if you want an afternoon out with the kids, take them along to Folly Farm Donkey Sanctuary. There's a little gift shop there, which is kind of a charity shop. It's all stuff that's been donated. But she runs that on a Sunday afternoon as well, to raise a bit of money to feed the donkeys. And I'm going to sit, next time I see her, I'm going to really question her. I'm going to see what else I can find out about Witchcraft Hill and the stories of the servant girl who was hung there. I'm not sure exactly how much she knows, but she made me aware of it, and I can't find anything online. It's one of those things. Between now and Halloween, I need to find some. I'm going to have a good search online, see if I can find some old obscure books that might give me a bit more of a clue. And that's often how these things go. You know, you'll be looking at one thing, can't actually find what you're looking for, but along the way, you'll stumble across other little gems of information, and you think, oh, that'll be interesting. Let's go and have a look at that. Sorry if that camera's bashing against the windscreen. Oh, into first. Alright, I am going to need 4-wheel drive. Here we go. There we go, that's better. Okay, now we're up the hill, I'm going to go back into 2-wheel drive, or I'm just going to end up binding up my gearbox. There we go. Back into road mode. Now this old house next to the pub that we're going to see in a minute, apparently, and now when we get there I'm going to have a closer look at these markings and symbols all over the house. I've only ever driven past, I've never actually stopped and looked closely, so it'll be interesting to see what they consist of. But apparently the reason it's an interesting place is when they built the house, or when renovations were going on with the house, they found in the garden a pre-Christian burial site. There's no church there, no cemetery, it's nothing to do with any modern Christian burials, it's something ancient. Again, this is why I need to hopefully find myself an old book that tells you what's what, because there's nothing online. Oh, what does that say? Yeah, right. Now here's that mural house that I was telling you about. Actually, I wonder if I can come and sit out here with me pint. I'll do that. Let's see. Ah, now I can see. I don't want to stand here filming somebody's house for too long. And if they come out and complain, I won't include this bit in the video. But I can see just there it says 1879. Now can you see those markings? From a distance, it looks like the same pattern repeated over and over. What's that? B-A-B. Brownlow? Esquamvideri. Okay, I'm going to look that up when I get home. Esquamvideri. I'll stick a little note on the screen if I find out what that means. From a distance they all look the same, but as you can see they're not. Every single one is different. Now it's in the grounds of this building, somewhere around here, that they found that pre-Christian burial ground. Something else for my Halloween video, my hopeful Halloween video. Fingers crossed I'll actually be able to find something to tell you. Now, I didn't know that there were benches here actually, I'd never spotted them before, so we will go in and get a pint. Probably an extortionate one. Actually, I might have prejudged them there a little bit. Not as bad as I thought. Once you get inside, it's just a nice little country pub, you know. The people in there seemed fairly ordinary. Not what I expected from the cars that I see parked out here when I drive past during the week. And that's a pint of Side Pocket for a Toad by Tring Brewery. That's a popular beer around here. It's in all the pubs because Tring Brewery is just down the road. This is a nice easy drinking 3.6% pint, and it cost me £5.20. But I think because I'm old, that seems a little expensive to me, but I think, to be honest, it's not. It's just about right these days. Right, let's have a look at the map then. This is where we started, at the church at Nettleton. And this is the bit of what they call a Roman road, which we've just come along. Now obviously any remainder of this Roman road that might have headed south has now been obliterated by this golf course. There's nothing left there now. But you have got a modern road just parallel to where it might have run, which goes through the golf course and heads just off the map here down into Berkhamsted. Now just about here off the map is Berkhamsted Castle. So it's possible that this Roman road went from Berkhamsted Castle, or somewhere even beyond that, but would have passed by or through Berkhamsted Castle, which is known to be Norman in origin, and is suspected before that to have been a Bronze Age, Iron Age settlement. It's the perfect place for one, and they have had finds there. So it may be this old Roman road came up from Berkhamsted Castle through what's now the golf course, and the remaining bit of that little track that we just came down with the bridge. The bridge is about here. But then if you follow it, I think I showed... No, I didn't show you. It's too late now. But actually, where we started at the church, there is a public footpath that goes up here to St Margaret's, the little hamlet of St Margaret's. There is a public footpath that continues, so that could possibly be an extension of that. And look, here at St Margaret's, where I also work quite frequently, in the woods here in St Margaret's Copse, St Margaret's Coppice, there's a burial mound. You see? Now unfortunately that's on private land, so we can't go and have a look at that. But it does all hint at the possible ancient origins of that trackway. The Romans may well have just recovered, made a bit more passable, a little section of the road there which went from Berkhamsted Castle, a suspected prehistoric site, up to the burial mound there and onto the River Gade. I'm just theorising here. I've got no proof for any of this, but I like to do this. I like to look at maps and extrapolate where they might have gone before they were destroyed. And that's directly on it. Down here, as you go into Berkhamsted and towards the castle, look. Where's Grimm's Ditch? We've been there. I made a video there. There it is, look. Right here. That's where Grimm's Ditch comes at an angle, and it's a very clear, very obvious piece of Grimm's Ditch. I've been to lots of Grimm's ditches that are barely discernible, but that's a very, very obvious earthwork. And you follow it from the track, parallel down the pathway, down the public footpath, which is probably, I would say, the original extension of that Roman track. It comes right to this point on the corner of Grimm's Ditch, look. Right there. Now, nobody knows what Grimm's Ditch was. There are lots of ideas, but whatever it was, the Romans were using this particular corner of it for their footpath to go through. That's one of those common questions, isn't it? If you could travel back in time, where and when would you go? Well, where is no issue. I would be right here where I live. I love where I live. If I could go back in time, there'd be multiple points in time that I'd like to see, but I wouldn't be travelling more than 8 miles from my house. I'm fascinated to see what was going on around here, because there are so many anomalies. Nobody's quite sure about any of it. Grimm's Ditch is a complete mystery. Anybody who claims they know what Grimm's Ditch was is lying. Nobody knows what Grimm's Ditch was. If it was a thing anyway, it's more likely, I think, lots of little things that kind of look like they were one thing. We'll save that for another time. But also you've got the hill forts and the settlements like Maidenbower. Oh, sorry, there goes my map in the wind. You've got all the hill forts and the old settlements like Maidenbower, the top of Ivanhoe Beacon. Nobody's quite sure what the hell Maidenbower was. It's obviously not a fort as such, because it's not on top of a hill. Maidenbower isn't even remotely defensible. There is an idea that it was somewhere where local people would gather in times of danger. When invading tribes were moving in and burning places down and pillaging, I might say the other one, that was where they would go to enclose themselves and keep themselves safe. It was vaguely defensible in times of strife, but it's not somewhere where you could keep a lookout, for example. It's not somewhere where you could watch the landscape and see what was going on. It doesn't make a lot of sense. A lot of it doesn't make sense, and I think this video probably doesn't make a lot of sense. It's just me looking around trying to figure a few things out. I'm probably never going to figure them out, but it's a lot of good fun looking, you know? Where the bridge is, where the Earl would have taken his wife, the pathway would have continued along here to his manor house, to his big stately home. Now, interestingly, look, if you look to the east of where that bridge is, you've got a farm track here that joins up with what's now Nettleden Road. So I wonder, and it does go down to the River Gade. Here's the river, here's Nettleden Road. By the way, Folly Farm, the donkey sanctuary, that's just about here, should you wish to go. The track goes down there where it actually becomes what is now Nettleden Road. So I would propose that that bridge was part of this road that came up here and originally continued through here, across the little bridge and along the side of Golden Valley off to Ashridge House. I'm probably wrong, but that's what it looks like to me. That'll do. Now when we follow this track that we've just followed, when we follow that up to St Margaret's, where you've got St Margaret's Coppice and the burial mound, along the way there you go past what's on the map as a Buddhist centre. It's a Buddhist temple, it's a big Buddhist centre. I like Buddhists, they're good people. I visit there regularly for work, not the temple itself, but one of these farms up here. They're good people. You see them out in their orange robes and their bald heads. And I was actually told that that this was purchased in the 1970s by George Harrison and donated to, I don't know if it was the Hare Krishnas, or were they even Buddhists? I don't think they were they? They were Hindus. But anyway, I was told that this was purchased by George Harrison and donated to the Buddhists, supposedly. It was bought for them and given to them. Actually, that's rubbish, and I know that it's not true. The place that I looked it up, the place that George Harrison bought was off elsewhere in Buckinghamshire. It wasn't this particular one here, so if anybody tells you that, that's incorrect. Okay, a bit of a weird video maybe, more of an investigation than a presentation. But it's clarified just one or two little things for me. Well, I say clarified, you know. Oh, there we go. Alright, it's a bit wobbly. I'll see you later. Bye.